Hey Josh, how's it going?
Oh, it's not going too bad, Elliot. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty good. We're in the thick of snowpocalypse 2026 here, so second snow day for my children. Beyond that, you know, just keeping on. How about yourself?
Well, not dealing with the little kids at home, but it is throwing a wrench into things. I think seems like most of the country, east of the Rockies, dealt with this storm in one way or another, and this is probably the biggest snowfall that I think we've had in our area in many years. I think we got about 9 inches or so, and
Yeah,
it was impressive.
yeah, significant for sure.
Hmm.
Well, I know the topic that we wanted to talk about today is a reverse obituary. I know that we spoke about this concept a little bit when I was talking about the book that I was reading, Morgan Housel's The Art of Spending Money. But as I kind of prepared for this episode, really found that it was more founded in a idea that Warren Buffett actually came up with. Really, the concept is trying to start with the end in mind and think about what do you want your obituary to read when that fateful day comes, and then try and reverse engineer what actions and steps you need to take in your life to make it so. So, with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
Yeah, I was kind of inspired to have this conversation and head in that direction with it because over the last week or so, we lost one of my close friends. His father passed away. He lived a long life. He was in his 80s and lived a long, happy, healthy life. But as his health had started to decline, to kind of tie it into personal finance a little bit, it was becoming apparent to my friend and his brother that dad handled all the finances. Mom wasn't too involved, and I don't know all the details, but know that my friend and his brother had to have a meeting with dad and try to get as much information from him as they could, as time was not necessarily on his side. Luckily, he had the mental wherewithal to be able to help them navigate through here's where all this information is. And I just thought that it was a good reminder to all of us to, I guess, two things. One, we want to make sure that we are preparing for the inevitable at all times. I mean, it can be as young as really, I feel like you can get, as long as you have assets of some sort, you should be preparing for what the future might look like for those assets upon your passing. And then two, it's a good reminder to have those conversations with your aging relatives, parents, whatever, and just try to make sure that they are also preparing in some way. Because in this situation, had my friend not reached out to his dad, there would have been a lot of loose ends to try to unravel after the fact, and trying to, like, not only dealing with the grieving, but then trying to figure out, like, what was dad's process, where's the passwords, what's the accounts, like just all the day-to-day stuff that we all take for granted. I mean, like I said, luckily they were able to get to that within a week or so of his passing. But it for me, it just kind of instills that Lori and I, we set up a trust for ourselves. Whenever we started accumulating assets, when we were on the financial independence path, we were actually thought that maybe we weren't even far enough along that we should worry about it. But we had a couple rental properties, we had our own home, we had some other things that we wanted to make sure that if something happened to both of us at the same time, we had a plan in place that it could make sure that those assets are distributed to our children. And so, not that everybody needs to have a trust in place, but that's something that we have to make sure that we maintain on a somewhat regular basis. So probably every couple of years we need to be looking at it, making sure that it's up to date, making sure that there hasn't been any significant changes, and then working with our attorney to make those adjustments. So in the case of like real estate, for example, we got to make sure we're buying our properties in the trust and that everything is aligned properly. But it's just a good reminder. I mean, if there's one, I guess, positive takeaway from going through this process, death and funeral and all that, it's just a reminder that for all of us, we need to make sure that we are constantly planning and preparing and making sure that we don't leave our children or our heirs in a more difficult situation than it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think is probably most important as that takeaway is, yeah, just ultimately being prepared and making decisions to live kind of here in the here and now too, right? Is something that is so core to the fire community is that we're planning for that future date. We're big savers, right? But I think what's important is to not just always be thinking of, well, I'll be happy when, when I retire, when I hit that fine number, when I do this, when I do that, that I think it is important to have that semblance of balance. And I think, like we've spoken about in previous episodes, is kind of the evolution of the fire community and how it has changed from kind of the OG fi that I think you and I kind of fall into, as opposed to the more modern kind of coast fi, more balanced approach. But I remember, it reminds me of a conversation that I had with Mindy Jensen when she was in town. Her and Carl were in town. We went to a Cardinals game with our local fi group, and I don't remember exactly how we got on the topic, but as anybody that knows me well will say, I certainly like to talk about major things and decision points in my life. And so we were on the topic of a job for some reason, and she asked me, well, do you like your job? I said, no, not really. Does it light me up? She said, okay, then why are you working that job, right? And I bring this tangent back to our concept of this reverse obituary and just kind of thought on life is short. Make sure that you do what's important to you and live your life in a manner in which you're going to be happy no matter when it ends.
Yeah, and probably started this conversation out on a somber tone, and I probably should have started out with a little bit more of a fun swing with regards to my friend's dad, because just to kind of go back to that for a moment in response to yours, I mean, he was the kind of guy who I think followed that kind of philosophy, lifestyle philosophy. He was a fun-loving guy. I remember whenever I met my friend that I went to their house whenever I was in like junior high, and they were really big into Disney, which I thought it just seemed a little bit. I wasn't used to that. Growing up in my home, I had an awareness of Disney, but I'd never been to Disney World or anything like that, and learned that they were, I think, in the process of planning a trip during one of the first times that I met his family. And one of the things that they mentioned, this was early on, I was probably like in seventh or eighth grade, and his dad had said something like, "Yeah, I own a bunch of Disney stock as well." At the time, it like struck me as kind of, I didn't really even know what that was. Like I had a vague concept of maybe what owning Disney stock meant, but it was like it planted a seed, I would say, a little bit that it just kind of stuck with me. Obviously, it's almost 40 years later and I still remember it. But yeah, I don't know if he still owned Disney stock all these years later, but they were just really big into Disney. I think that he eventually had the opportunity that he retired well ahead of traditional retirement age, and he was an engineer, plumbing engineer. If I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but he retired early and was able to then do like some sort of consulting or contract work for several years after that, like kind of on his own time, just whenever he wanted to. I remember him talking about just having like one client at a time and just not even dealing, he was low stress or stress free during those, later career years. So anyway, thought I would take it back to maybe something a little bit more positive, but I mean, hey, I think it's good to talk about these things because it's going to happen for all of us sooner or later, right?
Right. I mean, I think just the same way that Phi is trying to remove the taboo topic of money that just isn't talked about, I mean, death is right up there too. It's not like people are talking about that all the time, and it's not an easy subject to talk about. And usually, when we are talking about it, it's at the time in which we're the most vulnerable and it's the most chaotic, and so many other factors are occurring. So, to be able to talk about it outside of that time, I think, is when you can really have the thoughtful reflection that any of us are really looking for. As we maybe move into the thought pattern of a reverse obituary, I went to my good old buddy ChatGPT and asked about a template and specifically around Morgan Housel's view of this as opposed to Mr. Buffett himself. But the three questions that it kind of started me down were: number one, what do you want the people closest to say about you? Number two, what kind of work life are you aiming for long term? Number three, what do you most want money to fix in your life? And so, as I kind of thought about those questions specifically, I'll give my answers. And so, what I said is ultimately, I want the people closest to me to say that I'm kind, I'm patient, I'm helpful, I'm loyal, and I'm giving. I'm certainly not all of those things today. I certainly try and be, but there's one of those that certainly jumps off the page to me right now that I'm like, ooh, I'm not that right this moment.
You had a really great answer for that. It would be hard for me to top that. I would like to be remembered also as somebody who doesn't take things too seriously. And I probably say that just because like in my own mind, I don't feel like I am all that serious of a person, but I know that sometimes my family thinks that I am, and maybe that just becomes a part of having kids that are like late teens, early 20s, where there's always a constant, I don't know, like parental advisory required for the things that they are doing, and they're taking life a whole lot less seriously, and I'm trying to encourage some a little bit of seriousness, but that would be one that I would hopefully over time that I can continue to let my true self be seen and not be seen as kind of like a rigid sort of like father trying to make sure that we're doing everything right.
Yeah. Well, hey Josh, I mean, you could have just stopped at, instead of having teen children, at just stop at children, because
Children,
I
yeah.
feel like I have that exact same maybe mentality when especially around my family and my children. I feel like I'm much more serious than certainly when I'm out with you or the Phi group or anything else. I mean, I think maybe a much more lightheartedness comes out, which is such a paradox, right? Is we want to give our best view. I mean, personally, I want to give the best of myself to my family, yet I think in a lot of ways, in some ways, they get the worst of me.
Yeah. I would also add that I think you mentioned loyal. I would also add to that helpful and available. It still kills me, Elliot, that I had to say no to helping you with your brakes recently. I don't want to be that guy that says no to my friends when I have the ability or experience to be able to help them with something. But I know I can't be everywhere all the time. But still, hopefully, when many, many, many years from now, you won't remember that I didn't help you with the brakes, but I did help you with all these other things.
I'll be able to lord it over you for decades to come, right? Is you remember that one time? Yes.
Yeah,
No, I'm very proud that you were able to set your boundaries and break the people pleasing tendencies. So
it's hard.
kudos to you. It,
Yeah.
it is hard. So number two was what kind of work life are you aiming for long term? This obviously is a funny question to some extent, I think, in the fire community, but the way that I answered it was that I'm aiming for long term work that is not focused upon material success, but instead on time freedom and assisting people live a better life. So, whether that is myself, my family, just others in general, I mean, that's part of the beauty of FI is we can choose how we want to spend our time and not be motivated by the thing that motivates so many people in this world is money. And to your own point, right, is you can't do everything, so you have to choose what things are priorities in life or be able to push back and say, "Hey, I would love to help you with that thing and I'm willing to do that, but I got to do it behind these three other things that come up." How about you? How would you answer that question?
I think it depends on how you classify or categorize work. Because one thing that I've been guilty of here lately, when I'm home, when it's the weekends, or even sometimes in the evenings, is that I'll step away from whatever's going on in the rest of the house and come in here to my office. And Lori's called me out on it a couple times. My son Landon has called me out on it a couple times. They're like, "You're always in there editing a podcast or or working on a YouTube video or something." And it's not because I feel like I have to. It's just I want to. I enjoy the process. I like being creative and I enjoy doing those things, but I have to make sure that and I don't consider it work. I consider it hobby slash, I mean, I guess that's no slash. It's essentially hobby and things that I enjoy doing. But I got to make sure that I am balancing that just as I would have and put boundaries on it just as I would have with my career, so that I'm not taking time away from them or giving the appearance that I'm deprioritizing spending time with them.
The concept of work life balance still applies when you are retired and you want to call it hobby life balance or whatever it is. I mean, you still have to have balance in your life and make sure that you're prioritizing the things that are most important. So, number three was what do you most want money to fix in your life? For me, this one was pretty much the slam dunk answer for the FI world is, and maybe it's a cop out, but I said what I want money to fix most of my life is the ability to have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. That's why I'm on this path is the ability to say, nah, not for me. And, or say, yes, it is, and I like this activity. Like you said, a hobby, it's something that I don't view as work, and we haven't made a single dollar off of this. Frankly, I don't care if we ever make a dollar off of this. The joy of this activity is just in the act of doing it for myself. So that was my answer. How do you feel about that?
I can't imagine adding anything to that. Yeah, you summed it up. I was just, before we were recording today, I was actually just lounging around. I had the funeral earlier today, and I was like, you know what? I'm just not gonna do anything the rest of the day, and I was okay with that. And I love having that freedom to do what I want when I want, and not have the pressure of, oh, am I missing something at work? Do I need to hop on and check my emails when I get back? Do I need to make sure that there's no fires that I need to put out, and all that kind of stuff, and just not having those deadlines. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, so I mean, really, I won't sit here and read off what ChatGPT has decided my obituary looks like based off of that input. If you so care, you can comment to me and I will happily send it to you. But I think the whole exercise is just helpful to think about what do you really want out of this one life that we're given, right? And make sure that you're taking strides towards the goals that you actually care about. Is I know that I'm certainly guilty of something that we've talked about in the past is saying, hey, health is number one priority. Well, my actions are incongruent with that statement. So something needs to change in order to make that true today. I would say we just need to challenge each other, and we challenge you as our audience to work through this exercise. I think that's the most important part of any of these conversations. And I was talking to my buddy Douglas the other day. He was talking about putting his coursework that previously he taught on the platform Substack. And he was thinking about whether to put it out there for free or put it behind a paywall. And I won't go through all the details of this, but Douglas is in a comfortable financial position, so the money is of really no consequence. But I said, so what's the point of putting it behind a paywall? And he said, well, there's tons of metrics behind saying, well, if you actually put it behind a paywall, people will actually do the work that I'm telling them they should go do, as opposed to if ultimately you just listen to this podcast, you listen to us try and give you these prompts or whatever else, and it goes in one ear and out the other, and you move about your day, well then, hey, did we really succeed? I don't know. I don't really care. That's not going to motivate me one way or another. However, it would make my heart a little bit warmer if I knew that somebody had actually done this exercise. So, if you feel so inclined, you can drop us a note and say, yes, I did this.
I will perform this exercise, and I will think about it a little more than what I did just spitballing, random thoughts while we were talking about it here. Give it a little bit more preparation. But maybe just to kind of tie it back in, it's like we were talking about at the beginning. I think whenever you just are talking about life and you're going through this situation, the unfortunate passing of a close friend or family member, it is a good reminder to not only think about how you're living your life and how will people remember you, but also are you putting yourself in the best, yourself and your family and those that are closest to you in the best possible situation so that they're not scrambling behind the scenes and while they're grieving to pick up the pieces with your finances. And in a lot of cases, you can't perfectly plan out everything, but I know just for us, we've really tried to make a very conscious effort to put TODs on our cars. We've tried to make sure that we have, this is an easy one that everybody should have already taken and put in place, is putting beneficiaries and having those listed in your retirement accounts or your brokerage accounts. For real estate, you can do a TOD deed to make sure that that title can transfer. So the point of all of that stuff is just to avoid probate. You don't want all of your assets being tied up in a court system or going through probate and potentially losing a significant portion of them through the court system, or for them to go in the direction that you wouldn't have wished for them to go into. And then if you have significant assets, I think, and this isn't financial advice by any means, but having a will and trust is good to have in place, and I'm glad that we have ours. So one of the things that we do, and we kind of have fun with it a little bit, is we do talk to our kids about this kind of stuff, and we do make a joke of it, if you will. But we just had dinner with our oldest daughter, Lexi, the other day, and we were talking about, what if we both go out at the same time, Lori and I, we both go out at the same time. So what is Lexi going to do? So on our end, we're trying to make sure that we're preparing her, we're pointing her in the direction of where this information is. So we have a safe with some documents in it. That's one place to start. But beyond that, we have a kind of a list of three people that she needs to contact. One is the attorney's office who wrote up our trust, get the ball rolling on all of that. Second would be a real estate agent because all of our kids have said they have no interest in taking on the rental properties. So go ahead and sell them all. We don't care. And then third would be to contact one of our five friends because I feel like one of the things that we have in our community would be helpful people that would be able to say, hey, yeah, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? Just somebody that's knowledgeable. And our kids have met a few of you guys now, so that there would be, I think they would at least be comfortable talking to somebody. And then the fourth thing is to have a party. We are not religious people. We do not have any interest in the ceremonial type things. We've talked through like, here's what our wishes are. Lori and I are on the same page with that for each other. And we just want people to have a good time. So throw a big party, have fun, try to minimize the grieving process as much as possible. And, we've been having those kind of conversations with our kids for several years now, to the point that I think it's at least somewhat, they're kind of used to it. Hopefully it would soften the blow a little bit, make things a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more than anything else, is repetition is the way to assuage, fear of the unknown, right? Is practice makes perfect, so to speak. All right. Well, if you've stayed with us this long, you're committed as always. Thank you. If you'd like to drop us a note, we read the comments on all of our platforms, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., and we try and respond to you. But otherwise, thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Elliot.